Picture this for a second. You save up for months and you drop a cool $1,000 on a brand new smartphone. Or maybe you buy a new car. Or hey, even a house. You hand over your hard-earned cash, you sign the papers, and you walk away fully believing that product is yours to do absolutely whatever you want with. I mean, you bought it, right? But what if I told you that in a shocking number of these cases, you don't actually own what you just bought? Welcome to our latest explainer, where we're digging into a deeply frustrating, honestly kind of wild reality about modern products. Ultimately, this is a story about control and who actually gets to dictate what happens to the stuff you literally paid for. Okay, let's dive into this. When you buy something, who actually owns it? It seems like such an obvious question, but try replacing the dead battery in your iPhone without going to an official Apple store. Boom, you'll likely get a scary system warning that your phone can't verify the battery. Or imagine you're a farmer trying to fix a John Deere tractor right in the middle of a frantic harvest season. You might find yourself entirely locked out of the machine's software, completely unable to use it. Or try repairing a Tesla in your own garage, and you'll quickly realize you're basically forced into their mandated service network just because you can't access the diagnostic tools. So what does this all mean? Well, it brings us to a massive pushback happening right now all across the globe, the rise of the right to repair movement. This movement takes aim at a very specific, very intentional corporate strategy, which is the total control over repair. Advocates argue that manufacturers are systematically eliminating your ability to fix your own devices. And why? To protect their billion-dollar empires, of course. By making sure you have to come crawling back to them every single time a tiny thing breaks, they essentially lock you into this endless post-purchase revenue stream. It's a trap you just can't escape. Let's look at exactly how they pull this off. The absolute biggest tactic they use is software locks. These are proprietary diagnostic systems that are strictly restricted to authorized dealers. Take John Deere, for instance. We're talking about massive tractors that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, machines that farmers absolutely depend on for their livelihoods. Yet these things essentially turn into incredibly expensive, giant green paperweights if something goes wrong, because they often won't even display basic error codes to the owner. You literally need John Deere's exclusive, highly guarded diagnostic software just to know what piece is broken. And spoiler alert, they do not make that software available to farmers or your local independent mechanic. Which leads us to this completely absurd reality: hacking tractors just to farm. I mean, think about the incredible self-reliance of your average farmer. When a machine goes down and crops are literally out there rotting in the field, they cannot afford to wait 3 days for an authorized dealer to maybe show up. So this intense digital lockdown has forced many of these farmers to take extreme measures, like downloading cracked, black market Ukrainian firmware just to bypass the digital locks on their very own machines. They're literally hacking their own property just so they can do their jobs and save their harvests. Crazy, right? Then we have the second major tactic, which is parts pairing. This involves digitally serializing individual physical components so they only match one specific device. This is a signature move brilliantly perfected in Apple's ecosystem. In newer iPhones, the screen, the battery, the camera, they all have unique digital serial numbers. If you take a perfectly good, genuine Apple screen from one iPhone and put it onto another identical iPhone, the device actually detects the mismatch. It'll trigger non-stop warnings or even disable features like Face ID entirely. Why? Simply because you didn't pay the manufacturer to perform the authorized swap. Tactic number 3 is monopolizing parts and manuals. This one is super straightforward but incredibly devastating. Manufacturers just flat out refuse to sell replacement parts or release repair schematics to independent repair shops. To put this into perspective, imagine buying a brand new car, bringing it home, only to discover that the hood is literally welded shut, and only the dealership holds the special tool to open it. Even if you completely possess the skills to fix the device yourself, manufacturers make it physically impossible to get the raw materials and instructions you need. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the staggering number right here, 60 million. The world produces over 60 million tons of toxic electronic waste every single year. Let that sink in. 60 million tons. To help visualize that, that is literally heavier than the Great Wall of China. Every single year. When we can't fix our things, we throw them away. And the vast majority of this massive, highly toxic mountain of e-waste ends up getting shipped overseas where it poisons landfills and local communities in developing countries. But hey, the environmental disaster isn't the only consequence here. The hidden financial and cultural impacts are huge. First off, we've got the skyrocketing cost of ownership. When devices cost anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000, forcing users to pay exorbitant authorized repair fees, or worse, pushing them to just buy a whole new device, disproportionately hurts low-income users. Second, we're witnessing the death of a 50-year-old culture of repair and self-reliance. And third, and maybe most importantly, it creates this total illusion of ownership. Philosophically speaking, if a giant tech company can remotely dictate exactly how you use and fix your device, you don't really own a physical product anymore, do you? You basically just hold a very expensive licensing agreement. Now, to be perfectly fair here, we absolutely have to look at the other side of the argument. Manufacturers pose what seems like a crucial question. Is this about security or monopoly? The big companies argue that if just anyone can crack open a device and start swapping parts, it creates massive cybersecurity vulnerabilities or physical dangers. They claim that unauthorized parts could theoretically introduce dangerous spyware, or that cheap third-party batteries could become major fire hazards. And honestly, it is a legitimate concern. We definitely need to acknowledge that when we're talking about protecting our sensitive personal data and our physical safety. But let's break down that corporate security claim for a second. Right-to-repair advocates are quick to point out that this argument starts to look a bit, well, hollow when you examine how these companies actually behave. For example, after literally years of fiercely fighting repair laws, Apple suddenly flipped and supported a 2023 right-to-repair bill in California. Why? Because they realized it was going to pass anyway, due to massive political pressure. Plus, data breaches and privacy violations have absolutely occurred even within authorized Apple stores. The reality is, true security standards and independent repair can perfectly coexist. You can absolutely have highly secure devices without monopolistic control over who gets to turn the screwdriver. Let's move to and see how this builds, because despite all these roadblocks, the movement is gaining some massive momentum. Look at this timeline of recent legislative wins. In 2022, New York passed the first comprehensive U.S. electronics law, and Apple, feeling the heat, launched its self-service repair program. In 2023, California passed an even stronger bill. By 2024, Minnesota, Colorado, and Oregon jumped on board and followed suit. And zooming out globally, the European Union has mandated that spare parts must be available for up to a decade post-sale. These are huge, optimistic grassroots legal victories driven by ordinary folks, farmers, independent repair shops, and awesome advocacy groups like iFixit. However, we can't celebrate just yet. The fight is far from over, specifically when we look at medical and ag tech. While consumer electronics like phones and laptops have seen some really massive progress, critical battles still remain. Hospitals are still actively struggling to repair their own vital ventilators without manufacturer approval, something that, as we all saw, became incredibly urgent during recent years. And in the agricultural sector, well, the big equipment manufacturers have made a whole lot of nice-sounding public promises to farmers. But so far, they've delivered very little real, tangible change. So the crucial point is, you actually have the power to influence this right now. Here are 4 super practical actions you can take today. First, vote with your wallet and support repair-friendly companies. Check out iFixit's repairability scores before you buy anything, and seriously look into highly modular, fixable devices like framework laptops or Fairphones. Second, learn to fix things yourself. Start small. Maybe try upgrading your laptop's RAM yourself on a weekend. Third, support legislation in your area. Call your reps and back widely supported right-to-repair bills. And fourth, please stop treating devices as disposable. Make a commitment to keeping your smartphone for 4 years instead of upgrading every 2. And this brilliantly illustrates the larger philosophical issue at play here. The real question is, who gets to control the things we fundamentally depend on every single day? Manufacturers often present modern technology as basically magic. A black box that is far too complex and way too dangerous for ordinary people to even touch. The right-to-repair movement asks us to entirely reject that premise. They argue that when we relinquish our right to repair, we aren't just losing money to big corporations. We sacrifice our fundamental human capability, our curiosity, and our self-reliance. Technology is made by people, and advocates argue it absolutely should be repairable by people. If this explainer opened your eyes to this crazy, invisible lockdown on the things you own, please drop a like, subscribe, and definitely share your own repair blockade stories down in the comments. We really want to hear what kind of nonsense you've had to deal with. We'll leave you with this final, slightly provocative question to consider. As our physical world becomes increasingly digital, if we aren't allowed to fix the software that runs our lives, do we really own anything at all? Until next time, remember the movement's core message: fix it, don't ditch it.